Thanks everyone for joining. We're gonna just wait for just a minute or two and kind of let everybody filter in here before we get started. All right, looks like we've kind of got a good group coming in. So welcome everyone. Thank you for joining the Helio Lending webinar. Get a few things out of the way. As normal, again, we won't be commenting on any of the publicly traded company business, and we will do our best not to be giving any financial advice to anyone. So I'm Franco Devivo. I'm the host. Today with me, we've got Chip Ridge from Millennial Title. Chip has been gracious enough to join us. So we've done a couple of these webinars. We've talked to real estate agents. We've talked to real estate investment groups. And I thought it would just be kind of, next person down the line involved in it. Chip, tell us a little bit about your company. I know you're involved in the crypto and real estate world and the ever evolving nature of it. So thank you for joining me first all. Appreciate it. And we've chatted for quite a while here. Why don't you just tell us a little bit about the company, what you're kind of seeing in the digital space and the crypto space as far as real estate goes, and how your company fits in, and why we work together.
Awesome. Well, thanks for having me, Franco. Really excited to be on this, and always enjoy talking about what's going on in the blockchain and crypto space as it relates to real estate. Just a quick background on Millennial Title. We are a regional title company. We're based in Tampa, Florida. We've got offices. I'm seated in Louisville, Kentucky. We've got offices in Northern Kentucky, greater Cincinnati area, down in Nashville, Memphis, Tennessee, St. Petersburg. We just opened an office in Dallas, Texas. So we cover, I like to call it sort of a regional landscape. We actually are licensed in 23 states, and we've done closings in about 38 different states in the 6 years that we've been around. I personally have been in the title business for about 20 years, longer than I'd like to admit. And became really interested in this specific space, the blockchain, cryptocurrency, DeFi space about a year ago. We had a gentleman that worked here, younger gentleman who was trading crypto and telling me all about Bitcoin and Ethereum. And I sort of was like, go back, play on your computer at night and, and come back and tell me how much money you've lost. And then slowly but surely, he actually started to bring me sort of like use case ideas around real estate, and was telling me a lot about tokenization and just how crypto and some of the different coins and specifically the blockchain and Ethereum. And so we started to do some research. And in January of 2021, we opened what we call Encrypted Estates, a small sort of think group subsidiary of Millennial Title, and started to really just do research, understand who was doing what in the space, what could be done, what was sort of on the horizon, what practical uses were out there for now, and also sort of looking into the future. And one of the early takeaways, Franco, that we got was, one, there was a tremendous amount of interest on the investor side and on the agent side, on the brokerage side, on people like yourself in the lending side. Where there wasn't a lot of interest was on our side. Everybody was sort of like, this is crazy. There's too much risk involved. This will never work. And then as we started to sort of dig a little deeper, what we were finding too was, at least this is opinion, like everything on this seminar, webinar would be our opinion, is that there was a lot of denial going around in our industry about what was coming or what could be utilized within the blockchain and how to leverage cryptocurrency and what the interest is. So the last probably 3 months, and I think you and I connected probably about 5 or 6 months ago, we have just seen a surge of interest and activity. I'll give you sort of the here and now, and then we can talk through sort of some of the how things are going. But we are seeing buyers who want to use cryptocurrency as collateral and use that collateral to buy real estate. That is a here and now. And we've got vendors that we can work with that can accept cryptocurrency like yourself as collateral and do conversions. Just so people understand, because I think probably one of the biggest misnomers is that the transaction itself, whether cryptocurrency is involved or not, is still today treated in a very traditional manner. We're still doing traditional title searches. For the most part, we're holding escrow. Well, we can only hold escrow in a fiat currency. We can use a third-party vendor if they want to hold it in some form of cryptocurrency. But the steps are still very traditional. The big moving and the big thing that buyers and sellers and agents and vendors need to be aware of is if crypto is going to be involved, we just really define what that exchange is going to look like, when it is going to happen, what elements need to be verified, and then the dating of the transaction so that everybody knows when the money is going where, it's been properly verified. And then we as the title company still do settle out in fiat currency, and we still do traditional recordings, and we still issue a traditional title policy. So the intersection, albeit it's really not that complicated. I think the biggest, Franco, the biggest thing I would say is just the communication piece and the timing piece have to be very well defined in the workflow.
Sure. So let's kind of walk everybody through what that looks like. So let's say someone comes to Helio Lending, they use their crypto as collateral, we give them fiat. From your standpoint, where do you guys come in and take over from that? So that's really the transaction, right? They give us the coin, we give them the cash. Now they can move quickly if they need to buy. So, but because everything is still done more traditionally than not, and I think that's a fair statement to say, right? It's easy to say I want to buy and or sell with crypto, but it's hard to find two people who are willing to do that, right? I don't think that that's been so, and I know it's changing to be more that way, but now, like you said, it's probably a little bit more traditional. So once they come to us, they get the fiat, then, where are you guys stepping in? Kind of walk through that process. How long do they have to have that from? What kind of paperwork's involved in it from your standpoint? What does everybody need to know? Because, we're a DeFi industry, right? So lending is easy. I want to say it's easy. There's no credit checks. There's no massive amounts of paperwork. There's a little bit of KYC and off you go, right? Wallet to wallet transfers and fiat goes somewhere, whether it be to their bank or their dedicated location. So kind of from that point, take us through where you work.
And just so you know, so we have been a party to what they do still, what we call it a wall-to-wall exchange, which is what you mentioned at the first part, where you had a buyer and seller, and they both were willing to accept a form of cryptocurrency. And in that carve out, it might be a percentage. So that person, buyer and seller, a specific one I can mention, $2 million deal, 200,000 was going to be a wallet-to-wallet exchange. So the buyer had actually Bitcoin, and they were going to send the seller $200,000 in Bitcoin. And so we were able to. Then they were working with a third party on the lending side for some of the other funds, which were the fiat funds. So the coordination of that the coordination of that looked like, Franco. So they wrote out the contract. Remember, all of the contracts have to reference US dollars because, and the reason is really one, ultimately, we're all going to tie back to that because of one, exchange purposes. A lot of it deals with tax and reporting. We as a title company, when we report into the clerk's office and they're going to base your taxes on, they will not accept any remuneration except for fiat US dollars, at least in the fifth continental US. And that's where we work. So just to be full disclosure, we are domestic based and a domestic company. So anybody has any foreign questions, unfortunately, I'm not your guy, but I do know that people do that outside. But so we would work with you. Well, Frank, you would give us, yes, you would essentially give us The terms and conditions, which really are between you and the buyer or the loan, the person that's borrower in this case. And then we would just give you, we would prepare the settlement documents and say, this is exactly how much US fiat needs to be transferred into our account.
Okay.
And then here's the day that fiat needs to come into our account. So it really feel very traditional in a lot of aspects.
Yeah.
And so once those dates were defined, I think the biggest thing that we've run into is just making sure, because sellers are, I would suggest, leery of a would-be buyer using crypto. I think there's still a lot of, I guess, people that are still like, wait a minute, is this person in a fish or a scammer, or do they really have it? So I would suggest it's very important, and this is something that we focus on, is communication. So creating a very transparent communication loop so that both of the agents are very involved. Yep. Both the buyer and seller probably get more touch points than they would in a traditional from us. We would typically touch a buyer once or twice before closing. And then, the seller maybe once or twice to gather certain amounts of information. I think in these cases, you have to be a little bit over on the communication side and really make sure and lean into the relationship with Helio to say, okay, when do I need to get you the crypto? What's that KYC timing look like? When will those funds be available so that we don't have any sort of last minute hiccups? Because once we say there's a disbursement date, everybody anticipates that.
Yeah, and to kind of let everybody know, typically, there's a couple of things that fit in there. Usually people who have crypto don't want to sell it. Or so this is where the lending piece comes in on that, because they still own that asset at the end of the day, right? They repay the loan to us and they get their crypto back. But typically the process with somebody who's ready, it's verifiable. We have LTVs we've got to work with as well to make sure that we're protecting underlying assets. I tell people, unless it's a Friday afternoon at 4:00, right? Probably 24 to 48 hours when somebody's ready to go, just from beginning to moving that money over. So generally, once that's made, there have been cases where, depending on the bank, the fiat's been received, before the phone call ends. So, we do loans, 250, 500, a million, 15 million. I mean, it's really all over the place. Obviously, the larger ones take a little bit longer, but you can feel comfortable to say 72 hours for those. But again, that buyer's, he's got to, or he or she need to be ready to go. We need to schedule the calls. We need to, make sure that we're taking care of them at the end of the day, because, this is an asset that they don't want to lose. They want to know where it is. They want to know it's safe. They want to know, how everything works. And so that's where Helio comes in, because, we very much, somebody in the organization calls every person, says, hey, let us talk you through this process. Let us walk you through it. What you find online, then you can find it online. Look, it's easy, but it's not, this isn't a cookie cutter situation. Everybody's got different needs, different amounts of crypto, different interest rates. I know we can get 5% on $1 million, with a 70% LTV. That's not, I don't know many companies out there who are doing that. And for certain other lenders, we can get somewhere. So let's say somewhere between 0 and 5%. Just depending on what people are looking for. So, I think we also have to be mindful of that, but just kind of, and that was the long piece of how long it takes and when the money's got to be there, depending on the size of it. I'd feel comfortable saying 24, 48 hours. We can move pretty quick.
Yeah. And some of the questions that we run into on the buyer side is, around security. And I'll let you, Franco, maybe touch on that. They're they may or may not have reservations about, okay, what type of documentation do I need to have in hand? What type of, where is my crypto going to be? Because what we see on our side, what traditionally would happen, and we hope to be involved, because this is really for us a win-win, is that client, that buyer client would actually go and get traditional financing sort of after the fact, and then use that traditional financing to come back to you and pay you off. So it's, it's a very circular relationship, but there
with no
is
tax. Remember that.
That's
No tax, no capital gains tax, because this is
that's
considered a loan. So that's another bonus.
and that's the real secret sauce on how this whole process works and why it is so attractive to buyers. And at the very beginning, full disclosure, when we didn't have a relationship and weren't that well versed in the utilizing crypto as a currency, we were just pushing everybody into BitPay and saying convert your crypto. Obviously there's not a lot of gain there. If you want to touch on, I can Franco talk a little bit about sort of Gen 2 of what we're working on, or if you want to touch on anything more on your side of the documentation, I'll be more than happy to.
So I had a question come in here, so I'll address it before we get into that one. So somebody had asked, what are the typical terms of the loans? And how do we handle the volatility when that's loans? So I'll give you guys the brief on this one. So number one, storage, usually it's a cold storage within the lender. So one of our larger lenders that we use, I know they store everything in Fireblocks. So they've got hundreds of millions stored in there. It's very safe. Some people use Gemini. So there are more of the traditional places where the coins are stored. The typical terms, generally they're anywhere from 6 to 12 months. You can roll them in some cases if you need to. Again, these are designed to be shorter term loans. And then as far as how do we handle the volatility? So it really depends on if the product is a margin-based product or if it's maybe a collar loan, which is a put and call, which has a floor and a ceiling as far as what you can get. So as that market volatility happens, there could be a margin call on it if that's the type of loan that's chosen. But that we're going to look at that person, how much coin they have. Again, if somebody's using 100% of what they have, margin-based lending may not be for them. But on the other side of that one, coin is rising, so there's also margin refunds as well. So if you have it on both sides, then it's how they look at the volatility of the coin. So it does fluctuate as we all know. But if someone were to say have a LTV at 50%, probably margins aren't going to be a worry because that's protected. I mean, one of the biggest drops we've had in recent history was 60,000 to 30,000. So those people generally wouldn't have had that much or any margin call because they have time in between. The companies will let the market typically correct itself before they do that. So that was just a quick answer that. Interest rates, they vary. It really depends. The more complex and the larger the loan, they could go up there. I mean, you can be looking from, I would say, anywhere from 0 to 12%. I know that's a big range, but somebody wants to loan $60 million and they want it for a year and there's margin-based lending, you're looking at that's higher risk. So that's a higher interest rate on that. But you have some shorter term loans where you can get 0 to 4, as I mentioned earlier, for $1 million and up on a 70 LTV, we can do 5%. So I think that covers all of the questions that have come in. Average size loans are about 600,000. People go, I would say personal touches 100,000, and we, like I said, we've entertained up to 60 million. So we can kind of go, big or small on that. We can be very flexible with people. So I think that answers all of those questions. Got them out of the way. Thank you. So yes, let's get into kind of what you're seeing phase 2, where this digital world's going from your standpoint.
Yeah, and it also as a quick sort of, I guess, final wrap up on what I like to call generation 1, which is the here and now. A couple of things. One, if you do have somebody who's just literally trying to do a crypto into a fiat exchange, we have vendor partners, and Franco can drive you as well to vendor partners. Usually it's about a 1% fee on those exchanges, and that can happen in 24 to 48 hours as well. The biggest thing is the KYC element. That you do need to have that. The other thing that sometimes that comes up is sort of contractual language. Technically, it's a cash sale. So people are like, well, do I have to disclose I'm using crypto? You would if you were going to try to do a wallet-to-wallet exchange where you're going to try to take a seller and a buyer. And then once again, that's still a dollar-denominated transaction. You don't say, well, I'm going to send you 2 Bitcoin. you got to distill it down, and the settlement date dictates what the exchange rate looks like. So market risk would really be up to buyer and seller, depending on what that disbursement date looked like. Really fall on the buyer, and the buyer could reach out to Franco anyway and do some type of hedge
Right.
opportunity if they were concerned about some type of rate risk, exchange risk down the road. But so that's sort of the here and now. In the future, what we're working on, which will be really cool, and then I think Franco, what you all are working on is even cooler.
Yeah.
But we're working with a couple of vendor partners. One, there's a group called Ubiquity that's developing a smart escrow product that is going to be pretty whiz bang. And they're going to have the capability to onboard actually crypto via stablecoin, and that'll really make the ecosystem a lot more fluid for all parties. So you won't have any what I like to call exchange drag or issues around having to go back and forth in fiat and so forth. That's all going to be dictated by a couple of things that still have to happen. One, there has to be more clarity around the stable coin regulatory environment and what constitutes good funds. So good funds is really the golden rule for us in the escrow world. We have to settle in good funds, meaning we can't take, the current is I can't take a personal check into my escrow account and consider and wire out on it today, because it's not collected funds. So the utility of the stable coin, which is sort of essentially supposed to be aspect of dollar for dollar denominated digital currency. And there's been a lot of talk around different ones, and I'm not going to name names because might get a cease and desist order, but there's been some speculation around some of them, whether they're really denominated by, assets and what those assets look like. But there has been a lot more clarity recently, which is good for our industry. And I think you would agree, Franco, regulation obviously is there's a tipping point that we'd all prefer not to go over, but there is some substantive regulation that'll help us in the industry, especially on real estate, definition of what stable coin, what we can use to settle in, and that'll make for a much more fluid and it'll give us the ability to settle out as well to seller, vendors, and so forth in some type of crypto-based currency, whether it be a stable coin or whether we use some type of atomic swap product to push out, and where they can essentially elect what type of currency they want to settle in. And so, our prediction, and once again, it's just a prediction, is that those tools will be available in the next by Q2 of 2022, based on all the conversations that we're having. And we think that's really exciting. And we think that's something that's really going to, once again, just enhance what we're doing. And then the last thing I'll say is the utility of blockchain is super important. And there's a lot of layers to that we could get into. But the one I'll talk about on the transactional side is the capability of the payment rail system to be super secure, to have essentially, we're creating wallets that are secular to each transaction. And there's also a multi-sig capability, so that this phishing and taking and rerouting money into bank accounts that are, somebody sends somebody a scam email, they click on it, they go in and they get the routing number, and then they push that money out. This will really put some rails around that. And then it's also instantaneous, which is great. So you don't have all the friction of going to the bank and having to order up a wire or going to get a cashier's check and, the inefficiencies. And hopefully that'll lend itself to finally lower cost. I just read something that closing costs have gone up 14% in 2021, which is really crazy to think about. I know inflation's out there, but the closing cost shouldn't be up 14%. So this can really help with that.
Yeah. Yeah. And then you have the NFTs, and you have that space, and you have, all of the real estate and blockchain, kind of a lot of people are starting to move into that, right? We see it with art and music, and we see all these crazy sales out there. And, we've seen some, done with real estate that ended up not costing a lot of money, right? So The future for this is really, really exciting. And obviously we can do the lending and whatnot on a global scale. But, I think, within the US, all of our lenders are properly licensed, so we're not running into, the safety is kind of the number one priority here, especially when it comes to your crypto. I mean, nobody wants to just lose a coin and not know where it goes. Right. So we've got some. I think that was it for the questions. We had another one, Mr. Sariki. I'll answer that one. That's just a little different opinion on the African real estate market. So yeah, is there anything else, Chip, you want to kind of bring up, want to talk about as far as how we work together, whatnot, or anybody? Certainly, people have asked for you to please put your contact information up there for them. So
yeah, I would
do that in the chat.
Yes, I would just share, I'm going to put that right now, but I would just share that, to your point, it's an evolving space. And, if it's something that interests you as an investor or as a real estate, person that's transacting in it, it really is something that you just have to continue the education piece of it. And then, what will help, and I think I saw John Markunis is on this. There's a lot of cool, different organizations you can join, just go in, and Fiverr's one of them. He can maybe put in the chat. But there's a lot of areas that you can actually go in, and what helps is just getting the word out, both on the consumer side and then also from the political side, which that's not my cup of tea, but getting your legislators, they typically don't really understand it. I mean, they've shown themselves not to understand it. And so we have to sort of lean into that. But the engagement, I think, is crucial, and it's happening at a very fast pace right now. So it's an exciting time.
Yeah, it is. And that's one of the things that's very important to us at Helio as well, right? It's just all about education. And, we announced yesterday during a press release that, kind of our short-term roadmap as a company. So especially as it pertains to real estate and how that works, we're going to have a Helio exchange. It's helioexchange.io. So you can pre-register now, and we'll keep everybody, up to date with that. From that point on, we want to have, the ability to do the smart contracts and the minting of the NFTs. Just build an ecosystem, fintech, tokenization. I mean, all of that down the road, I think, is something that we're super excited about doing. So, you or your clients, you would be able to hop on there, use the exchange, get it right. You probably get some better fees because, we're friends. We have a friends and family rate we could offer, but we can pretty much do, whatever. But it's exciting for us to be able to do that. So you guys can contact us at heliolending.com. There is a real estate button on there. You can put in your information. I'll reach out to everybody who does that myself. You can pre-register at helioexchange.io. I'll send you an email for that one. We'll keep you up to date on, when it's going to be going live, what's happening with it, what benefits is it going to be to you as whether you're a beginner, whether you're investing in the real estate, or you're a seasoned trader. We're really, really excited about all of that happening. So definitely looking forward to that one. That puts us just at about time. So I'm glad thank you for putting your contact information in there. Thank you for being a part of this. That's very, very informative, right? That education, like you said, you got to educate people. And, for us, that's huge as well. We're educating on the lending, how people are using it. Why is it good for you? Versus just selling it. So, we've all got that.
And I think, Franco, you all have got a really good, presentation that walks through. One of them is a little more complex, and so people have to understand that the collar and but the basic on the lending side, I think I would encourage, and I think you can access that, I believe, through your website. If I would encourage anybody on this on the webinar who's interested in the product and specifically wants to be able to sort of get a little bit more understanding of the workflow. It's very well laid out, and it really, I think, gives I'm a visual learner, and it gives a very good visual on exactly what those steps are. And
Yep.
then that takes away the intimidation factor that
Absolutely.
can sometimes be with this.
And anyone who reaches out to me, through the website, I have it separately as well. So I'm happy to guide you through it, walk you through it. And we'll do that. But that's about it for time for us, Chip. As always,
Yep.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. It's great to catch
Yeah.
up with you. Thank you guys for the interaction, the questions. And we will see you on the next webinar, which will be out pretty soon. So thanks, guys. I appreciate it, Chip.
Thanks, guys.
We'll catch
Take care,
up.
buddy.
Appreciate it,
Have a
guys.
good one.
Take care.
Later.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.